It is now my pleasure to introduce our Indiana Secretary of Commerce, David Adams. David has served as Indiana Secretary of Commerce and a member of Governor Mike Braun's cabinet since his appointment in January. In his role, Secretary Adams oversees multiple agencies, including the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, the Department of Workforce Development, the Governor's Workforce Cabinet, the Indiana Destination Development Corporation, the Indiana Arts Commission, the Indiana State Fair, and the Ports of Indiana. David, I don't even know how you can do, that many things, because long ago, no one in this room will remember, I had that job and I just had one responsibility, IEDC, but you've got many. Of course, the common goal of those agencies is driving economic opportunity for the state and fostering an entrepreneurial environment for innovation. Prior to becoming Indiana Secretary of Commerce, David served as Commissioner of the Indiana Department of Workforce Development. He also served as a Senior Advisor with the Boston Consulting Group, where he advised public and private sector clients on economic growth strategies, workforce transformation, and innovation ecosystems. Prior to that, he served as Chief Innovation Officer at the University of Cincinnati, where he led the creation of the Cincinnati Innovation District. That effort became the model for the state of Ohio's innovation strategy in partnership with Jobs Ohio, which is, if I got that right, the equivalent of IEDC in Ohio. The work not only catalyzed regional growth and talent development, but also laid the foundation for a scalable model, bringing together higher education, industry, and government in a powerful collaboration to grow talent and jobs across the state. David is a lifelong entrepreneur, having deep industry experience in a variety of sectors. He's a graduate of the Speed Scientific School of Engineering at the University of Louisville. Please join me in welcoming our Secretary of Commerce, David Adams. Okay, as I was saying to start, how are you even awake and walking this morning with that many responsibilities, that many agencies?
Today is the last day of session, so everything's done. The budget's complete, and we should have a procedural vote this morning, and then, as I always say, the real work can begin. So
yes, there's a lot of news breaking last night on that front, and if you all haven't found out what that news is, there's a place called IBJ, Indianapolis Business Journal. You can find all about it.
Absolutely.
For sure. So, David, thanks again for being with us this morning. And I think everybody in this room is excited to learn a lot from you and how the IEDC is thinking and functioning today. But maybe you could just start out by giving us a little bit of background on the kind of the bigger vision in economic development that Governor Braun came into office with, and that you and he and the team are now working to execute.
Oh, absolutely. Well, hey, first I just want to say, hey, it's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and it's really a great honor for me to be serving as your Secretary of Commerce. And so, with that, when Governor Braun came into office, he first just took a look at the fact that we had over 60 agencies doing 60 different things. So he said, is there a better way for us to provide services to the constituents state of Indiana, from individuals to companies? And so he reorganized state government from 60 agencies into 8 secretaries. And so, as you pointed out earlier, in terms of all the agencies that I have responsibility for now, we're really thinking about, how do you take workforce, which is the limiting factor in terms of what every business is trying to do, how do we connect that with economic development and all the aspects that really relate to commerce? So we've created now a single agency or single Commerce Secretary that really has responsibility for this. As Governor Braun was looking at the state of Indiana, he said, we've done a lot, over the last 3 years to actually bring new businesses into Indiana, but I want to make sure that we canvass everything in Indiana, and we want to canvass all corners of Indiana. So how do we serve the 3.3 million Hoosiers that are working today to help them improve economic outcomes? How do we help businesses here in Indiana improve economic outcomes? But as importantly, how do we really canvass and help support all 92 counties, all the regions in our state, and do this at all levels, from entrepreneurs all the way up to existing businesses? And how do we create more intentionality, not just in terms of the businesses that want to be here, but how do we think about who are the companies and organizations that we'd like to see in Indiana? How do we get much more intentional about economic development?
So I know you've talked about 4 priorities, within economic development. Maybe you could walk us through those 4 priorities for the IEDC, and maybe it's beyond the IEDC, I think it is, but maybe just walk us through those 4 priorities.
Well, let's talk about commerce, because we've now combined workforce development with economic development. So today, as you're probably well aware, we're at 4.1% unemployment, which by all standards says that we're at full employment. So one of the key objectives that we have, there's 4 that the governor's assigned me to, is how do we upskill the existing workforce? How do we provide the tools for employers to help upskill the incumbent workforce that exists in the market today? If you think about it, in this tight labor market where companies are constantly looking outside the 4 walls for additional talent and some level of frustration by not being able to find those individuals, how do we actually help organizations think about individuals inside the 4 walls that can actually fill some of these key roles? Great example of that is Community Hospital here in Indianapolis, in that they took a look and said, hey, we know there's a nursing shortage, but every time we go out into the market to try to find additional nurses, we're just competing against other hospital systems. So can we take a look and see, are there individuals inside our organizations that could actually be upskilled and become nurses? And they looked at medical assistants. And they took individuals from $16 an hour to $30 an hour. Yes, they left medical assistant positions open, but they're now in process of thinking about how to fill those positions. It's one innovative example of where an organization is looking to upskill their incumbent workforce. We want to do this on a statewide basis. The second objective is the recognition that economic development is really a regional activity. What happens here in Indianapolis is different than what happens in Fort Wayne or Evansville. So how do we start to develop an economic development model that also is inclusive of the fact that regions are different, and how do we support the existing businesses within that region? So that's the second objective that the governor's outlined, and you may have seen he issued an executive order that has directed me, the Secretary of Commerce, to really look at a regional economic model that supports every one of those regions. So we're in the process of doing that as well. The third objective is we recognize that even within those regions, you have specific sector strengths. So we're taking a look and saying, okay, within a region, how do we really encapsulate that? And if you think about Indianapolis, and I know we're going to talk more about this, we have a lot of wonderful assets here at around life sciences. How do we become more intentional about how to really grow that ecosystem? And the last one is, as you know, Governor Braun's from Jasper, Indiana. He created a very successful business called Meyer Distributing. His wife, First Lady Maureen, is also a Main Street entrepreneur. He took a look at this and said, we have a lot of services today if somebody wants to go create that next biotech company. We've got incubators, and we've got accelerators, and we've got venture capital. We have organizations to support it. But when it comes to Main Street, Indiana, where these businesses may be the most important thing within their community, how do we help an entrepreneur, whether they're 25 or 55, acquire one of those businesses? Or how do we help an existing business expand what they're looking to do? How do we create a set of services to be able to support that? So it should pass today, this morning, but there's also another piece of legislation that is formally creating an innovation and entrepreneurship office for Main Street, Indiana, that's going to report directly to me. So those are the 4 things we're doing. I would tell you 2 of those 4s, upskill the existing workforce, the incumbent workforce, and Main Street are in law, should become law today. And then the other 2, he's issued through executive order. So in 4 months, we're really accelerating our efforts to help support those 4 objectives.
Very good. So I just want a reminder, either my iPad's not working, I don't have any questions yet. So if you've got any questions for the Secretary, send them my way, and I will work them in by scanning the QR code. Okay, if not, I've got plenty of questions, but just in case you want to participate. So talk a little bit about those 4 priorities you laid out. How in your mind do those priorities play specifically within the life sciences sector?
Well, I think it's a great question. I mean, one of the things that we're planning to do with regions is think about what is the economic objectives, what are the economic goals that particular region is trying to accomplish. So if you think about what we have here in Indianapolis, in just this particular region, we have a phenomenal set of assets. Yeah. That starts with our academic institutions. If you think about the great work that Indiana University is doing here, we've got the largest medical school in the United States here. Every one of those individuals that are going through that probably have a lot of ideas about products and new, things that surgical devices, things that could be brought to market. Those are all ideas that can be commercialized in some form or fashion. We also have Purdue University here. I mean, we're so fortunate as a community to have 2 Carnegie Level 1 universities in our city. And they both bring different aspects and resources to the table. We also have Ivy Tech here, which is a great workforce development system. So when you think about the economic tools, I mean, we're as well positioned as any community anywhere in the world. We also have, we're just so fortunate that we have, not beyond academic institutions, we have major corporations here that are really inspiring and making wonderful things happen, life-changing drugs every day. We have the largest medicine company in the world, in Eli Lilly here. And it's just not the corporate headquarters here. Think about all the research and development that occurs. We have one of the largest independent animal health companies in Elanco Health that's also headquartered here. So we've got some great assets that are here. And you probably saw Roche just announced $50 billion of investment. It's going to create an advanced manufacturing facility just in this ecosystem alone. And then beyond that, we have all kinds of infrastructure assets. We've got 16 Tech. We have the One Health Innovation District. We've got the SciTech Corridor. We've got, in Lebanon, we've got 9,000 acres of which Lilly is investing $13.5 billion on probably the most advanced manufacturing facilities anywhere in the world. They're also building a prototype facility there that I've been told by Dave Ricks, there's nothing like this anywhere in the world. It's unique. By the way, I love anytime a company tells me we've got something unique. It's something to build off of. So if you think about just that short version of all the assets that we have here, I mean, we've got a phenomenal, I mean, not a basic, we have a phenomenal platform to build from.
So you laid out the wonderful assets that I know this room knows well. From your perspective, I know it's early in your tenure, but where do you see the gaps, and maybe another way to the gaps in terms of opportunity to add to this sector, this important sector for our region, and is there, of course, we've talked about in the past, and a lot of people in this room are aware that some states, I think I'm thinking of Massachusetts in this case, years ago put out a big number and said, put a big pot of money out there, I think it was $1 billion, and said that we're going to invest in the life science sector. And of course, we all know where Boston is today. We visited there last year with a group from Indy Chamber to really understand and see it, with our own eyes. Of course, Lilly's made investments there. So where are the gaps in central Indiana and Indiana in general in the life science sector, and what are the opportunities you see?
So if you think about what I just laid out in terms of this patchwork, it is a patchwork today. It doesn't have a cohesive story. And if you think about Research Triangle Park, if we mention that term, there's a lot of images that come to mind. If I were to say to this group, where is the orthopedics capital of the world, we'd say Warsaw. I mean, it has a brand. It's recognized for doing that. Likewise, if we were to say Silicon Valley, I mean, that brings up images in terms of what they're working to do. I would share with you just historically, I think it's important to understand that Silicon Valley started in the late 1940s, early 1950s with Fairfield Semiconductor. Stanford University, I hope I don't offend anybody who might have a Stanford degree, but back in the 40s and 50s, Stanford was not considered to be a great university. In fact, the engineers they were recruiting to support Silicon Valley actually came from MIT. So they were transplanting people from Boston to the West Coast. But what's important to understand about that is we're looking at an ecosystem, an economic engine that's nearly 75 years old. To the point you were making about Boston, back in 1982, a little company called Biogen, that's not so little anymore, elected with MIT to start something that ultimately became what we now refer to as Kendall Square. And their moniker is, we're the most innovative square mile in the world. If you go into Boston today, you'll see Eli Lilly, you'll see Novartis, you'll see Pfizer, but you'll also see NVIDIA, you'll see Google, you'll see Amazon, but they've branded this as Kendall Square. And as Nate just pointed out, the legislature made a commitment of $1 billion to biopharma. And that was started back in the 1980s. So we're looking at an ecosystem, if you want, an innovation engine here that's nearly 40 years old. So when we think about our opportunity and our challenge, one is, I think you pointed out, we know what a 16 Tech is. We know what a LEAP in Lebanon is. We know what IU and Purdue are. We know what Lilly is. But when we think about the outside world looking in on us, and I'm thinking about talent attraction, talent retention, business attraction and retention and expansion, what's our brand? How do we weave together what this looks like for Central Indiana? And I would challenge all of us that it doesn't just become a brand, But how do we create a bold vision for what the life sciences sector can be in this region? How do we create a strategy, a plan around it? And then I think we need to be bold. I think we need to think about things in terms of B's, not M's. And I'm talking billions, not millions. And we've got a wonderful asset here, too, with the Lilly Endowment. And if you think about how Pittsburgh's been catalyzed, or if you've been to Bentonville, Arkansas, the foundations have really been an enabler to help drive this growth as well. So how do we think about this and be big and bold so that when we're talking to organizations that aren't here, either here in the U.S. or globally, that they start to see that, A, we have a plan in terms of what we're working to do, but talent can also see this as an opportunity that they can have a future here. It's critically important that talent is the number one issue that every organization we talk to today. How do we create a vision and a plan that helps us attract and retain the talent that we want here in Indiana? That would be the big gap, but I would also say I believe that's our big opportunity because we have a set of assets here unlike any other city anywhere in the world, and we get to define it.
So you mentioned the Roche announcement yesterday in terms of a big manufacturing investment in the life science sector. We know, of course, all the ones that you mentioned too. On the research and innovation side, where we know there's work going on here, but I think it somewhat pales in comparison to, let's just take the Boston area. You mentioned the big bucket of dollars that Massachusetts put up there. How do you see us trying to really make progress in taking our game to the next level on the research and commercialization innovation side?
Well, so a couple things. I mean, one, we've got to be big. I mean, we've got to think big. We've got to act big in terms of this. I mean, clearly, commercializing research is important. We need to, and I think, Indiana University is looking at this. How do you eliminate, I think with Russ is here, I think if I'm not mistaken, Russ, I'm calling you out. But I think, how do we eliminate the friction so that, research-minded or commercially-minded researchers see the universities we have here as destination locations, but also how do we commercialize that research, get it into the marketplace, and how do we bring additional dollars here? One of the challenges people talk about most times, and I was fortunate enough to have run the state's pension system under Mitch Daniels. By the way, I knew nothing about pensions at the time, but what I learned really quickly is when you represent 17 billion, you can get anybody to take your call. So I used this as an opportunity to go talk to the Sequoias, the Kleiner Perkins, and they said, money's not the issue. When you think about it, we don't understand Indiana's ecosystem. And I think if we think about life sciences and really creating this holistic vision and plan, and we make it easily understandable to startups that are here, as well as organizations that want to be here, I think we really simplify the ability to not only bring capital into this, but bring individuals into this as well. So I think that's a lot of how we can address the commercialization related issues. And the other thing that I would just say, here in the Midwest, we are very humble. We don't like to tell our stories. Well, I can tell you in commerce, we are going to tell a lot of stories because there's a lot of great things happening here in Indiana, but we got to tell our stories. We have to help people here see the stories, but as importantly, we got to help people not here understand the great work that's going on here.
Agreed. So we talked about, I mentioned, of course, that you ran the workforce development for the state of Indiana. Of course, workforce development is a big part of Governor Braun's strategy in terms of prioritization within economic development. When you think about the life science sector, how do you rate or what kind of feedback do you have in terms of the skilled labor talent necessary to do the things we're talking about, to take the sector at all levels to a greater plane?
Yeah, so if you think about talent, by the way, is the number one issue. And to kind of put this in perspective, so Brookings Institution did a report, and it's somewhat dated. I think it's about a decade old. There's a gentleman, Joe Perilla, that actually did the analysis. And he was trying to think about, what's been driving the economy over time? And so he took a snapshot and said, if you look at the economic value of all land in the United States, he said it's got about an economic value of about $25 trillion. He said, now, if you look at the economic value of all facilities, places where people work, but more importantly, places where people make things, he estimated at the time that the economic value of all that is about $60 trillion. Then he took a look at the economic value of knowledge. So the people in this room, what are the things that we're creating? That's to the tune of $240 trillion. So unlike land, which is impossible to move, and buildings, which are difficult to move, people can live wherever they want. You can't put economic borders up to retain talent. So when we talk to businesses today, individuals want to live in environments and be in environments where innovation is occurring, and businesses want to be in places where talent exists. What this also means, though, is that we've got to think about how do we connect. I'm an old supply chain management guy. If you think about the supply chain of products, of connecting demand with supply, how do we get a better understanding of the demand that businesses have and how the supply through Indiana University, Purdue, Ivy Tech can help support that? How do we start to do this demand-supply match? But as importantly, for organizations that aren't here or want to expand here, how do we help them understand from a workforce development standpoint how we can develop the talent specific to them? And I think there's already some great innovative examples. I know President Whitten and Indiana University is working with Eli Lilly on a co-op program where students, while they're in school, can actually get real-world experience here with, again, the intent, have them stay here in Indiana. Lilly also made a significant investment in Purdue University. In order to support the $13.5 billion investment they're making in Lebanon, they need a workforce. The workforce doesn't exist. So they invested money to create the Lilly Scholars Program. And you might look at that on the surface and say, well, that's a scholarship program. No, it's not a scholarship program. They're having a hand in selecting the 17, 18-year-olds that come into that program. They're actually modifying the curricula to support what Lilly's trying to do. They're going to have their leadership team on the ground with that cohort to help them understand the opportunities. And they're going to have an internship, but they're going to have a job. When I talked to the individual at Purdue and said, well, how's that program going? She said, you know what, we're overwhelmed with applications. And we're overwhelmed not only with applications from in-state students, we're overwhelmed with applications from out-of-state students. And of course, in my naivete, even though I've worked in higher ed, I said, well, is it the scholarships that are actually bringing this light? No. It's the fact that they can get a job. And I think these are just two highly innovative examples of where our universities are leaning in and really helping to work with corporations to say, help us understand what you're trying to do. Again, these are pieces of the story. When I talk about gaps that we have, we've got to find a way to tell this story to organizations that are not here. But more importantly, we've got to tell this story to people that are here. So if I may, just one other quick story. It's easy to look at economic development or commerce through the lens of a business. I'm really looking at economic development and commerce through the lens of the individual. How does the worker, how does the individual, how does talent think about jobs? And so I will just say that I'm at the tail end of being a baby boomer. I'm not going to date myself completely. But when I graduated from college, I was told, pick that first job very carefully because you need to be there a minimum of 7 to 10 years. Employers don't want to see resumes with lots of jobs. When I share that story with my 29-year-old daughter, she's like, Dad, what? 7 to 10 years? Bureau of Labor Statistics came out and it said by age 28, the average college grad will have 7 jobs by age 28. The average college grad will have between 12 and 20 jobs over a 30-year career and 5 to 10 different careers. Just think about the pace of change that's occurring. So place is important. Don't misunderstand me. If we don't have nice places, you're not going to get people to live there. But what's important to workforce and to talent is jobs. And can I see the opportunities within your community, not just for the job I'm taking, but can I see the job opportunities that are available for me beyond this job? And that's one of the things that we have, but we've got to overcome because it makes cities like, Boston. I know if I go to Boston as a biopharmacist or in the biopharma space, there's lots and lots of opportunities. And so we have to understand from workforce development, I get back to how do we create this vision, this plan to help talent understand that this is a destination location, and whether it's a startup or you want to work for a Fortune 500 business, those opportunities in mass exist here.
It sounds to me maybe there's been a little bit of a shift. We used to always say college grads would go to the place they wanted to live and then find a job. I think you're suggesting maybe there's a little bit of shift where college students or young people in general are saying, I want to find a good job, and then do you think that's happening a little bit, or do you think It's a combination of things. I'm just curious how you.
Well, it's interesting because we can always, look at the brands that are established. People bring up Austin to me like, well, we don't have the mountains, we don't have the oceans here. I still hear this argument 20 years later. And I'm like, okay, well, explain Austin. Has anybody here been in Austin in June, July, August? I mean, it is not a place you want to be. Some of my best friends live in Austin, and they're going to Canada, during the summer. But they've created an opportunity where if I move there, yeah, I've got a great place to live, but if I move there, there's lots and lots of job opportunities. That's the critical element. It's jobs. Yeah. Likewise, Toronto. Toronto was about the size of Indianapolis in 1970, 2.2 million people. I'm not going to ask the audience, but I will share with you, they are at 6 million people today, and pre-COVID, they had an intentional plan to go to 8 million people. Outside of New York City, it's the largest financial district in North America. But if you've been to Toronto in January, February, it's the tundra. I mean, it's not a place you want to be. So what attracts people there? It's job opportunities and a plethora of job opportunities. Get back to that 12 to 20 and the 5 to 10 different careers. Yes, place is important. You've got to have place. But Silicon Valley, even with all the things that we hear about it, people still move there because it is the place from a tech standpoint where you have lots and lots of opportunities during your career.
I want to change the subject just for a minute, and that's on regional economic development. As you know, the previous administration really focused on supporting regional economic development through programs like READY. The legislature, of course, doesn't have the dollars and didn't put any dollars in READY. Really focused on placemaking, some of the things we were just talking about. But can you maybe talk a little bit about Governor Braun's regional economic development strategy, IEDC's regional economic development strategy, how we'll maybe see a shift if there is one there?
Yeah, so to be determined. I mean, I think one of the things the READY, for the folks that aren't familiar with the READY program, so the federal government, we had $500 million to really focus on how do you bring regions together to help on placemaking activities to help improve the overall region. And so the real advantage, and I give a lot of credit to the prior administration, is it was an opportunity to bring groups together that don't normally talk and develop a placemaking plan. We want to leverage that to think about, okay, how do we help you develop an economic plan? But we also want to look and say, okay, even though that program has been successful, are those the economic regions that make sense? Or do we need to take a look at doing something differently? But I do think the important thing is we want to look at it on a regional basis and understand that what happens here from a regional economic standpoint is very different than what is happening in other regions of the state. And how do we lean into, from an economic standpoint, understanding strategically where they're trying to go, and then how do we as a state support what they're attempting to do? And that will be a shift for us. And a lot of economic development, our state and others, is what I'd call very organic. It just happens. And so if our GDP per capita is growing a little faster or slower than others, it really is organic based on the businesses that are there. We are going to pivot to a very intentional, proactive, and strategic approach to say, help us understand economically what you're trying to do. You want to grow from 800,000 to 1.2 million. And then help us understand how you're going to do it. And then as a state, what can we do to support you with incentives that allow you as a region to operate in terms of what you're working to do? So that's going to be the pivot that we're going to see going forward.
Last question. What makes you most excited about our state's life science sector in terms of looking ahead, looking to the future?
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited because I think, as we talked about earlier, we're not having to invent the assets to support the life sciences sector. We have phenomenal assets here, and as importantly, we have leaders. We have President Whitten, we have President Chang, we've got President Ellspermann, although we're losing her, which I hate to see that happen. I wish we could have talked her into staying longer. We have Dave Ricks, we have people like Jeff Simmons that are committed to this state. You don't always get that. You don't get that level of leadership that says, we really want to lean in and help us be successful. We need to take advantage of this time to go do it. But we have the assets. They're genuine and authentic to who we are here in this region. We don't have to create that. And so I think that's a phenomenal differentiator. But again, my challenge to us, we got to create a big, bold vision and a plan around this and be bold in terms of being able to tell our story to the outside world, as well as telling our story to the individuals that are here to help them inspire them that Indianapolis, this region, is a place where you can have a successful career.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I know everybody in this room is excited to help you do that. And obviously, this sector is so important for our city, for our state, for the region. And we're excited that you've got so much optimism, and I know you'll be paying a lot of attention to this sector. Thank you for saying yes to this opportunity, and we'll look forward to supporting you as you continue working to grow our state's economy with all the people in this room and beyond.
Well, Nate, thank you, and thank you all. And as I always say, this is a team effort. We're not going to do this just through commerce. We're all going to have to come together, and we are all in this together. So I think you're going to find that you've got a collaborative administration that wants to help us as quickly as we can pull this together and make great things happen. So thank you all very much.
Let's give Secretary Adams a hand.